art friends. I'm glad you tuned in again. I welcome you. What does fate do to a person? How far do early childhood experiences extend into the world of an artist? Are we fundamentally shaped by all our experiences and circumstances, including artists? These are questions that are important, among other things, for an artist's career and its development. But I didn't just talk about that with the painter Rebecca Bernau. Listen here to how Rebecca's painting has developed and where the journey is headed. Enjoy. How does the art scene tick? Everything we always wanted to know about art. A podcast by and with Petra Lawson. Hello, Rebecca Bernau. Hello, dear Petra Lawson. I greet you. I'm glad you're here and that I can quiz you about yourself and your art, which I really like a lot. She is lying behind me on her back, all four legs stretched out, and is sleeping deeply. I hope she sleeps through the entire recording, because if she doesn't sleep anymore, I have to quickly take her out. Yes, but Rebecca, you have a very similar dog, just fully grown, same breed, same color. Yes. She can't hear you. She hears... Yes, I have headphones on. She can't hear you. She only hears me chatting. Somehow that doesn't bother her. All right, Rebecca, I'll start with you right away. You were born in Aachen. We can immediately tell that we come from the same area because we can chat so casually. And you were born in Aachen, and I am between Aachen and Cologne. That is in Düren, tranquil Düren. No, it is not tranquil. How big is Düren actually again? Do you know? Oh, now I've already checked 100 times. It is small, yes. And all the cool people moved away after school. So there is also no university and nothing to study there. So they all actually have to leave, and I was there again last year and met a childhood friend. That was really nice. Everything else, I just showed my husband the little town and where we lived, my school and so on. That wasn't so nice. That was nice. Already a little sad. And then I learned everything stands and falls with the people, and when they're no longer there, then somehow no longer there. Did painting drive you away, Ottoman, or what? The studies?
Exactly. Yes, I studied in Wuppertal, so I lived in Düsseldorf and commuted to Wuppertal. And then love, through my husband, took me away. Initially with the idea, because my husband is also from Aachen, that we would go back, but Munich somehow doesn't really let you go. Then we had the kids.
Munich is really
Cool,
awesome.
right?
I love Munich.
Yes, me too, actually.
But
Munich
it
is...
polarizes, right? Some say, terrible. And there's no one who says, well, yeah, it just is.
True.
Or,
Yes, true. There are many who can't understand it, who only have this posh image in their heads when they think of Munich. But I also know many who have a very deep love for Munich, and especially for the surroundings. And what I really like about Munich, it's this village-like atmosphere, even though it's a big city. That's how I felt, even when I still lived in the middle of the city. I find that wonderful. It's very relaxed.
right,
People want
yes,
to...
not as if
Yes, enjoy
yes,
life, and I
yes,
find that somehow
exactly.
really great.
Are you going to eat Schweinshaxen, no matter how many 1,000 kilograms you can consume?
Yes,
Doesn't
and a
matter.
liter of beer with
Exactly.
it,
It doesn't matter.
as is
I love it.
customary. Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly. So I have to say, my mother was an artist. Unfortunately, she passed away in 2015, but that influenced me immensely. So art has simply been in my life really as long as I can remember. There was never no art around me.
Yes, that's totally uplifting, isn't it?
Yes. It somehow always felt natural.
Here,
So at home, me and my two sisters, I grew up with two sisters, we painted a lot with my mother. We always spread out the wallpaper on the kitchen table and were allowed to paint as much as we wanted and color everything.
yes, but that sounds really great. So
Yes,
a
that was
nice
it.
start into the artist's life,
Yes,
right?
totally. Yes, and exactly, a nice start. And especially this unconventionality, which gives me an incredible amount of freedom and strength today.
Yes, I can imagine that well, yes. I was just wondering if there are conventional artists as well. Certainly there's nothing that doesn't exist, but they are not the topic here now.
Your sisters didn't become artists, did they? No, one of my sisters is a lawyer and the other is a biotechnologist. So
Oh,
both
God.
really, we all found ourselves in completely different
Yes,
niches.
totally okay. But at first, you decided on a career in art education and studied design technology and media design at the University of Wuppertal, as you just hinted at. Were you not quite happy with the subject? Because you followed through, didn't you? You finished your studies.
Yes, yes. So I really put my heart and soul into my studies. I absorbed everything completely and really, really liked it. Yes. So as a child, I always said I wanted to become an artist. And through my mother, I knew how exhibitions worked and that it was possible. But during the time after graduating high school, when it came to applying and so on, it was so important to me, I just didn't dare to do it. I was always afraid of it. That someone, no matter who I imagined, would tell me it doesn't work or
Oh,
it's
right.
not enough. I was so afraid of that rejection that I took the easiest path.
I totally understand that. Listen, and you know what? I also think that was everything always has two sides. And because you saw that side, the life with your mother, you also saw that it could become difficult.
Yes, exactly. So my mother also did not make a living from art. That was during the time I grew up in the 1980s, a completely different thing than it is today. Back then, no one could do marketing for themselves. And my mother was also very busy with us three daughters and so on. This was, of course, always in the back of my mind. I just wanted to work as well. I really wanted to be independent and earn my own money.
Yes, I understand that, yes.
I must say, studying in Wuppertal was great because we had a lot of freedom to choose the courses that interested us. And during my studies, I was already very much into illustration and did film technology. And I had the opportunity to work freely in the facilities there. There was a lot of art history and there was graphics and so on. But in the end, you could build your schedule according to your interests. And when I graduated, I was pregnant with my first child. So I had 4 children quite quickly after finishing my studies.
Madness.
And
4,
more interestingly.
Yes, 4, exactly. Yes, 4, that's tough. But can you briefly tell again later? So continue, sorry.
Yeah, no, all good. And then I took some time for the kids. I already had a place for my teacher training in Munich. Indeed. Which wasn't easy because those subjects didn't exist like that. But something told me, I need my break. I have to reconsider if this is really my path. And I also just felt like spending time with the children and so on. And during that time, it totally broke out in me that I started painting freely again, and also a bit without. Someone in the background who looks at my paper and tells me how the rules work.
Yes. Yes. So, was it your mother who was meant by this, the one standing behind you, or was it a professor related to your studies, which did have some artistic elements with art education?
Yes, a bit of both.
Okay.
So, I think if I go back with my mother briefly, there were few boundaries from her side, but she wasn't the type to celebrate every picture immediately. For example, when my children show me something, I can't do that at all. But she was always so questioning. Maybe rethink that again. Or somehow like zooming into small sections of the picture and asking if something more could be made from them. That was a bit like a voice in my head, which was certainly good for me and my development. And then, of course, also at the university. And I always had more of that in my mind. Had questions like, how is what I'm doing? How is it received? Does it make sense? And does it have relevance? Is it good? Is it bad? And then at home with the kids, I could just completely let that go.
Yes, I understand. Yes, yes. This degree you did has, nevertheless, I don't want to say helped you. Let's say it wasn't in vain because you incorporated parts of the degree, namely digital art, into your later works.
Yes, absolutely. It was absolutely groundbreaking for me because I have to say, before I began this study, I had nothing to do with computers. I wasn't interested in them at all and always resisted them. And we had such great courses and also just the facilities and the computers to work on our projects there comfortably that I really grew to love this digital technology immensely and professionalized it. I enjoy it incredibly. It is totally my world.
When you say professionalized, what do you mean by that?
First of all, simply the know-how of the programs, right? That you receive endless programming of all kinds, learning how to connect them with each other, and then also to work freely in this program. So we have, for example, I can still remember the professor back then whom I found really great, Dimo Schilling, an artist also from the Bergische region. She did a film project with us where we turned any topic that concerned us into a film off the cuff. And it was so much fun because we started by painting scenes and then it developed over half a year. And during that time, you somehow discovered your own voice and inner artistic world. But in this digital craft, I was indeed involved there. That was what I actually learned on site from the ground up, as they say.
Yes, from
we
the
like to twist
ground
sayings.
up, I believe. Exactly. And then how did you develop it further?
When the children were still very small, I would sit with my iPad in the evenings after putting them to bed. And while waiting for them to fall asleep, I started illustrating and painting. And that is simply my great luck to have been born into this generation. Suddenly there were social networks. And then I made an account and didn't expect much from it, and then posted the first pictures on Instagram. And funnily enough, those were pictures of figures in traditional costumes, but always my figures without facial features. And this went over very well here in Austria and Bavaria. Okay.
The jackets.
So simply nothing to do. And I found that really, yes, I can sing along. I can sing along to this song. Yes, yes. So oops, now the dog is lying under me. Good, also good. So now I'll go to your account and take a look, and then we'll tell people. An incredible number of pictures. I love your pictures, really. I think they are wonderful. Oh, that makes me happy, Petra. Thank you. So I think they are so.
So great. Now I see them.
Then you immediately start speaking Bavarian.
Yes, the cheese. Yeah, you won't believe it. So mega, mega awesome.
Yes. And that was somehow. I used to make it a bit humorous because I just found it funny that there are really cool people here wearing Bavarian traditional costume. That was really fascinating for me. And then I drew it from an outsider's perspective. And then many people approached me and somehow found the way I drew it simply good. They liked it, it touched them.
Yeah, I think
and then
good.
a hotel owner from Austria, Verena, approached me. She has the hotel, the Golden Ox in Bad Ischl, Austria. And she asked me if we could print these pictures, if she could use them for her hotel rooms. She had taken over the hotel from her parents at the time. If we could equip the hotel rooms with them. And that's how it came about. Then an exhibition emerged in the middle of Bad Ischl, and then, yes, then it became a big part of my life.
I think, do you know what I find especially great about your pictures? We will, of course, discuss it later. You have reduced the form and then layered it over different surfaces, but that we will talk about that later. But these colors you choose, I find them phenomenal. Really, really great. Yes, yes, you did that really well. How do you proceed when you are painting a picture? You still have this digital process, which is actually still part of your work, right?
Yes, I would even say it is really the essence. So it just is, that's simply my profession, you know, it's my tool. So I have an iPad and I have my brush, digital brush, which I have customized to the utmost. You can set how much water you use. You can adjust everything completely as if it were your analog brush. And then I first paint the entire composition on the iPad by collagen use, collaborate, and then paint them. And then add parts and then enlarge them again. Reduce, change colors, and that's how these contrasts of colors naturally come about. I try to always go to the extreme, right up to the brink of pain. It's just super beautiful, but not too much.
The practical thing is that you can try everything out. And then just no, don't like it, return it.
Right. And you haven't ruined your picture or had to start over or wasted materials or anything like that. So I think that's really great.
Yes, exactly. And then how does it continue? So you then have your sketches.
Exactly. Then I have my sketchbook, and right now I'm transferring it to paper. I've also transferred it to canvas or wood
and when
or
you
Dibond.
say transfer, how does that work? So pressure.
Well, yes, printing patinas look dirty. You can still see them afterwards. They shimmer through. Those are often the hard edges that I basically cut out. My figures, they are cut out digitally, and I project parts, paint part. Then I sometimes have stencils, so it's always a slightly different path.
Yes, okay.
Exactly. And then I go over it with oil paint, pastel chalk, and acrylic in multiple layers.
What determines the type of paint you use, whether oil, acrylic, and so on?
That developed a bit. So I started with acrylic paint because I could mix it in a way that it became very transparent. Since at the beginning I had the idea that I wanted very transparent layers over it. Consider everything that has been printed now or what was created as a base surface is allowed to show through. Meanwhile, I use much more oil paint because I just find the brush stroke a bit nicer and can optimize it in the end, because the oil paint does not dry so quickly. And on the other hand, I also like to do a bit with oil pastels at the end, which then also gives a very tactile surface.
Yes, it makes you want to watch it. You will tell us later where we can do that. The obligatory question comes at the end. With this method, I would say you create a texture and also a depth that make your works come alive. Can you agree with me when I claim that?
Yes, I think it developed little by little. For me, it always feels a bit like, well, I think painting is now a bit like, it's a bit cliche because it's been said so often, but I can really relate to it. It's a bit like researching. You have somehow, once you've found your language in painting, it's a bit like a world that lies within you, which you explore bit by bit and with which you look at and observe other things. And that just happens in the work process. And so I find in the beginning there are always these figures, and as you mentioned, these women who speak a little of independence, or also right at the start, which were just observations, these figures in traditional costumes. It just popped out of me endlessly, and I do not even know why. I had so much desire to paint these figures and could not stop with it.
Okay, I'll take that. Exactly, you've already hinted at it. What exactly is this personal journey of yours? What did you discover there? What happened on this journey?
Well, I have to start a bit further back. I had an experience in my childhood. I was adopted by my family as a baby. As a 1-month-old baby, I joined the family, and for years it wasn't an issue for me at all, because my parents were and are just my parents, and I was a solid part of this family, just like my sisters. But when I was 16, I really externally controlled, I set out to search and spent my entire youth searching for my origins. I did a lot of research and became very, very involved with it. And at some point, it went a bit beyond the mere facts, the fact-checking, because I spent a lot of time on it and asked myself,
Yes. Yes, but you had no doubts. Well, I mean, 16, that's the storm and stress period. And then you push everything away and twist everything for yourself. And so, may I briefly ask, were your siblings also adopted, or are you the youngest who then came as an adopted child?
No, I'm not the youngest either. My 2 sisters are my parents' biological children, and I am the middle one. But my mother thought she couldn't have more children. And after me, she actually had another child.
That's already a classic, huh?
Yes, it's a clear
I've heard
path.
so often
correct.
that couples decide to get a little baby or adopt a child because they think they can't have their own. And then the child is there and bam, they are pregnant.
Yes, that's how it was. So my younger sister, who thankfully also came later, is 11 months younger than me.
Yes, oh, that works sort of. Yes, oh God, yes. Yes, I also have a sister. We are biological siblings and we are 13 months apart. Wow, okay. That's also a challenge. Something like that, exactly. And with us, they always thought we were twins.
Yes, with us too, funnily enough. With us too, yes. When we were little, they thought that with us too.
So we both had snow, and we were in Sardinia, and we both had snow white hair. Back then, that short, twiggy-like haircut was somehow in and
I'll just
hate.
say,
I'm just saying
there are prettier
hate.
children's pictures.
Exactly. I had this moon face, lots of freckles, so not so distinguished. But you're all the more distinguished today. Thank you. Yes, I'll leave it at that. Okay, so those are your roots, the search. About your roots. How has it been for you? Did you make any discoveries? In all respects, for your emotional world and in the actual sense.
Yes. Well, I was actually very lucky because I met many siblings. So many siblings who truly are my full siblings, not half siblings. Specifically, 2 older brothers who are 2 and 3 years older and 3 younger sisters. And I got to know them gradually, and
I believe you right away, yes.
because I was so much involved in getting to know them, and still even today, it's something that fascinates me when we are together. I feel that we are such similar beings.
Incredible.
So we are.
Yes,
and
I have goosebumps.
That I cannot put into words.
Yes.
Others somehow see it too, like friends or my family who are close to us who immediately recognize it. And that's something that unbelievably fascinates me to this day, which I didn't have as a child, because I always kind of
But how did you feel different in your family in which you grew up? What did you feel there that you were different?
So quite simply said, the appearance and also the voice.
Okay,
and I just have more. I mean, it wasn't so much. I wasn't really not wrong, different, or felt like that. But more that I saw the similarity and the sameness in others and just realized, okay, I don't have that. And then there was always the question of what I actually have. And I also knew before I met my brothers, that was, of course, incredibly exciting. I asked myself,
not like this, probably.
What is it about me that stands out, and what do they have?
Yes. You see her, you probably have similarities. So there are an incredible number. 4 or 5 siblings. How many were there?
5 siblings.
5 siblings,
yes.
so 6 children.
We
And
weren't alike.
wow.
And they are all just like us, all super creative. So all of them do something creative and are artistic,
Music
vicarious.
on the go. Oh, wow. That's so exciting. Wow. Yes, I think so. Yes. Yes. So I'm just wondering now, it really gets under your skin. Truly, like I said, I just had goosebumps. But how do you incorporate that into your work? How do you do it?
Well, I believe, or I would say I didn't do that consciously, but it kind of happened like that. So I can briefly come back to the question from before. As I said, I got to know my siblings, and then I had a few letters and also pictures from my biological parents and so on. They wrote a lot and painted themselves and so on, and I searched and researched. So I really, let's say, had the fact check in my hand. And when I went through all that, I somehow realized this story is that these roots were eventually cut off.
Yes. May I ask how old you were when you found out that your adoptive parents are not your biological parents?
I was 6. 6.
And
yes.
was that, how did you take it? Was it for you like, yep, doesn't matter, life stays the way it is? Or did you find it a bit problematic?
So I found it really terrible at 6 years old. I found it so terrible, and it was, so I think my father told me about it back then, and he thought I already knew or suspected it because I asked directly. So my parents really did it beautifully. We always had books on the topic, and you usually don't ask at 6 years old. Tell me, why didn't you adopt a child? But that's how it was with me. I asked him, I was sitting in the car next to him, And I just know I remember it so well. I know I thought, oh, it's so boring. What could I ask him now? Or what could we talk about? And then I asked him, why didn't you adopt a child?
And then my father said, because he thought, okay, now comes the moment and the question. He said, didn't we? And then I was like, what, my big sister or my little sister? And he kept saying, no. And then it was really terrible. I really couldn't believe it. And for days I just cried. So it was really terrible. Well, my granddaughter is 6, and sometimes she says things that just blow your mind. Then I think, how? They somehow have
A connection to the sky. Sometimes I feel to something higher. And when you ask such a question at 6 years old, well, that's natural when such books are there, but you've already thought a lot about it as if you had felt it, right? Yes. Who knows? Well, I think if you asked my father, he would probably say it like that because he always describes the moment a bit like that. And my parents always said they were waiting for me to ask. Yes, and then I repressed it for years afterwards. I didn't want to know anything about it at first. I just wanted to let go because my parents said it makes no difference to us. You are our child just like the others. And I completely let go of that and I didn't want to know anything about it. And whenever thoughts came up, I quickly suppressed them with everything I could.
Yes.
Yes, there probably just isn't the right time, right? From when do you start lying to your child? That's a big topic, I can imagine, for the parents. And from when does the child feel like they've been lied to? And from when is it bearable? I find that incredibly difficult, such a task. Yes, it's a fine line, isn't it? Yes, exactly. I also wouldn't know how I would do it. So it's a very, very big challenge, I think, here. And yes, but that was, I think, a bit like the search that somehow is within me and remains not as a burden or anything, but just somehow in me, that just a fact, right?
Exactly. I
Completely
know.
neutral. It is simply a fact, neutral, completely neutral. So
Yes, exactly.
you did well, right? It also sounds
Yes.
like you had it good. So you were lucky too. I have always been very lucky. Yes, exactly. Had a good little star in the sky.
Exactly. I'm about to cry. Oh, come on.
Is a bit touchy, I have to say.
Yes. Yeah, no, all good.
Yes, I think it just flows into the art. That is simply what I am somehow searching for and trying to rediscover on the canvas or on the paper. Or, yes, you know what? I think you can feel it too. I felt it in your paintings when I saw them for the first time. Yes, that's funny because we just had I also currently have an exhibition with 3 other amazing female artists. And at the beginning, just before the opening, we went through our spaces again. And then I also told a bit of this story. And then that came too. They also said, oh, they noticed that there was something more behind it or something that you can somehow feel, but can't immediately explain. Yes, something that remains to be discovered. Yes, probably. Something that remains to be discovered in your pictures or is. So I believe. Yes. I read that your art is described as contemplative and evocative. Do you see it that way too? Well, I can confirm it's compelling. For contemplative art, there, I'd have to ask the artist. Thoughtful is kind of a word. I mean, maybe I can understand what is meant because I can somehow relate it to me and my nature. Thoughtful sounds kind of dry somehow, a little bit, right? But I am, well, I very quiet. I think thoughtful is too quiet for your images. Yes, that might be. I would always say something melancholic, like something searching, questioning, or a bit inquiring. Yes, I think the moments you find and capture in a picture are so wonderful, normal every day. So I plan to, for example, on a current occasion, of course, a picture with one
Dog, tough.
Man could now
Yes.
imagine the mind of a dog. Sitting on the sofa, the dog lies sprawled, totally relaxed on this person. This looks for once like a man.
Yes.
You usually prefer women, and there's the hand over the dog, resting on the dog. And it's exactly like that. Very, very everyday. And yet there is a lot in it, a lot of feeling, a lot of warmth. I am always looking for, I wouldn't even say happiness. I find contentment to be something so great. And I find that absolutely in everyday life and not somewhere when I am traveling. Of course, I feel happiness when I'm traveling and I'm curious about the world and so on. But truly, so that I feel the big picture more in the little things at home, if you know what I mean. I expressed that a bit strangely now. I know it. And you know what? You can see that. That is exactly what you can see in your pictures. They
Yes,
are
funny.
like that. Everyone knows these situations, and it is indeed more. Why is that more? Well, we just discussed a part. Your faces that you paint, they remain free except for one picture, and there was a single one. Undisclosed desires, that one has a face.
Yes.
Why does it have a face? Yes, because it is supposed to be a bit of a self portrait.
Yes. Okay.
Exactly, but that has less to do with me thinking from the start that I want to implement this. It has more to do with there sometimes being works that didn't turn out well or that I somehow don't want to publish. I gladly give them to my children. So then my studio is basically free. And sometimes they prime the canvases or paint over them. And what the children always do first when they rush to the pictures is they paint faces everywhere. Oh, that's interesting. How old are your children? The oldest is 13, then 12, then 9 and 7. You really kept up well with those after just 1 year. Oh, God, that must be exhausting. 10 months
16.
between the first two, exactly. Yes, yes, that was a colorful time. It still is, but especially when they were little, when I look back, I mean, when they were really tiny, I always think, I don't know how one finds the strength. So I don't know. I couldn't do that today. First of all, just raising 4 children, that's an, oh God, unimaginable feat of strength, but then also building an artist's career. Hallelujah, that's okay. Hall Lujazoki. You can burn it. Unfortunately, I can't keep up with that. I can't speak Bavarian at all. I only know the phrases I toss around here. I can't do any dialects at all. And even if I try, those who actually do it can say, oh, stop, better not. My daughter, when we went to Switzerland, was the little one. My daughter was 13 and she jumps now Zurich German that
Oh, no.
friends who are all Swiss say she is like, I'm Swiss. You can't hear any accent in German and so on, right? And when I try to say something Swiss, everyone says, then my daughter always says, oh, mom, stop. Leave it like that. Leave it like that. Yes. Yes. I think I also, that's funny. I think I haven't really adapted when it comes to the language here. I think I still have this Rhenish sing song and I somehow want to, I really can't hear it, you know? Oh, that's true. But you have it for me. So that sounds familiar somehow. Yes, you
Yes.
also sound familiar. We felt that right away in our first conversation. So there's some sort of
Yes.
connection there. And then we realized there's something. It's the carnival.
It's like
the
that.
carnival. That must be it. Yes. Yes. Okay. So I think it's really great that your kids are allowed to paint on your canvases. And does anything come out of it sometimes? And do you hang it up or what do you do with the painting then? Yes, definitely. So the children's paintings are hanging here too. Exactly. I hang them up in the children's rooms. They're in our hallway, in the kitchen, everywhere.
12.
That's exactly what I wanted to say. They always immediately draw faces. And even when my children's friends are here or so, and we talk about works they see, the question always comes up, tell me, why are faces missing everywhere? Especially with children. Always.
And then, of course, it eventually intrigued me. And I said, come on, I want to seriously try. Work out a face and see which direction it would take. And that's how this work came about. And I really like it. So I like it a lot, but it's definitely not going in this direction for me. Well, why not? Somehow, that's not my path. That's not what I'm looking for or where I feel like exploring to become more precise with the face or something. I simply feel like becoming more abstract. The freedom is a bit gone, right? Yes, exactly. Right. And it is also like, for me, that goes more in a sort of craftsmanship direction. You know, I always say that the craft that I never really learned the craft of painting. I simply learned the digital craft, and I could now spend time refining my skills and painting realistic portraits. But I don't feel much like doing that. I am really keen on further professionalizing the craft I bring with me and have already professionalized for myself and continuing to grow in that area, research and see what else happens. I would rather work with other materials and media. And yes, that's quite clear to me somehow. Yeah, you just notice it. You just notice where the journey is going, right?
Yes,
The main
exactly.
thing is that there is a journey. I think it's
Yes.
much worse if there's stagnation, if you're stuck in one place. That the viewer might not notice it immediately, but somehow after 10 years, when you deal with a body of work, then you do notice when it's basically just painting on the spot, um, it becomes complete or just a reproduction of what you've done 100
Exactly.
times.
Yes, exactly.
You know, it needs to progress somehow. You must have the feeling, yes, and sometimes you don't yet know how it will continue. But often it's also the case that even while painting of a certain cycle, let's say, where I have ideas for pictures and I absolutely want to try something new happening or so, there are always moments when the color is applied to the base, and sometimes things happen so beautifully by chance, which are then so interesting.
Yes.
With which one would somehow like to continue? Yes, exactly. Exactly. Is there a picture that is especially important to you and that you would never sell?
Hmm.
No, that doesn't exist so far. So, since I have found this way, let's say my language, and paint the way I do now, I don't base it on the output at all. Instead, I see it as a continuous development. It's more about the process inside me and what happens rather than the values
Darling.
that arise at the end, which I can actually let go of very well.
Yeah.
I think your large works are particularly great. Interesting. Your works they somehow need space, I feel. Yes, of course. I also find painting large very great, large surfaces. And for example, in the current exhibition, I have also done a video installation. And that was always a bit of a dream of mine, to make a film that fills the entire room. I really like that. It's huge, of course. It's then projected with a projector onto a wall. Yes, for which I created the film from the parts from which the figures to emerge. Yes. And the individual forms, so to speak, fall into the space to assemble and then fall apart again at the bottom. Yes. And I think it's like that. When I've seen that. Yes, now I remember. Yeah, I think it's really great. Exactly. It is very large and that creates a very intense atmosphere, of course. I think that's great. Yes, yes, I can imagine. And I'm always impressed by how it's done, but we don't need to discuss that here. Yes, that's rather boring in the end. You just have to deal a bit with these things if you want to make progress on Instagram. Now, my daughter has studied film, digital film. They really
Ah, right.
helped me tremendously at first. Thank you, Meret. At this point, well, you don't paint your children, do you? Or have you already? Well, I haven't really incorporated child figures much into my work so far. interesting that you ask because, for example, at the beginning of my work, someone once asked me if I could implement something like that with children, and I somehow still don't quite well captured. So far, I haven't found the tone that I like. I find it incredibly hard to imagine. It should still well so that it remains art and not become children's illustration.
Yes, yes. Exactly,
I
yes.
imagine that to be really difficult. That's clear. Yes, that's somehow, but I would like to find a way because the figures I paint now, you can't really tell anymore if they are
Well.
women or men. They don't have an assigned gender, and I think that's great because in the beginning it was female centric. It also had quite a bit of fashion in it, which of course interests me. But now I think it's great that the figures are not necessarily identifiable as female or male anymore. And I would like it if who
you
also couldn't be identified by age. So it could even be a child, or a child could also be present. Because even though much of the work is about my individual experiences or my observations, I always try to transfer it a bit to the collective so that I somehow include
Yes.
everything a little. Yes. I find what you're saying incredibly fascinating. I got the picture. It's also quiet in front of me, looks like a
No.
person whom I would now assume is a woman who has done fitness or aerobics or how do you say, was at the studio for yoga or yoga. So somehow she has been exercising. And yes, now I'm just wondering, how can one do it so that, first of all, how can one even make it so that you see a young woman there? Because, dear people, I will post it. May I do that, Rebecca? Yes, of course. I'll post it with the announcement. Of course, feel free. It's probably just the neck, right? That's so narrow. Men have a different neck there. How is it even possible? This person has short hair, and we can tell by the head that it is a woman. First, I ask myself, as someone who is not a painter, how do you manage to depict that without a face and so on, with such reduced lines and make it visible? Sauerteils and shapes, it's often really just 4 or 5 shapes that make up
Exactly.
a figure.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. When you watch how it is painted, how
Yes.
it develops, it's just totally interesting. Move the cheek a little higher, and the figure has a completely different character, for example. Or make the chin a bit pointier, and a completely different figure looks at you. It's fascinating. And it's
Yes.
so much fun to play with that. Up until now,
Yes.
the figures have always been very likable, I would say. For me, they are all very warm and soft and very approachable, the ones I have painted so far. You have to paint a murderer sometime. I must
Fräulein.
indeed. Yes,
Really
very,
great.
very gladly. I can certainly start sometime to depict not so beautiful things. Or in my other podcast with Wolfgang Beltracchi, I just announced, I believe, that he used to go to a slaughterhouse and an anatomical institute to learn how the body works with muscles, tendons, and so on.
Huh? Yes, amazing.
Go in there and paint. It's really exciting to see what comes out of it. Yes,
Oh, they are
unbelievable. There are so many things that would be totally exciting to depict in that way. Yes, it sounds exciting. Yes, let's be curious, dear people, about where your journey will go.
Exactly.
Really great. Super. Where can we see your works seeing at the moment, exhibition wise at the moment, and perhaps in the near future or whatever? So now until the middle of the year, I already have some things planned. And indeed, currently, we have started on the 12th of January until in mid-April, I will be here in Munich, in Grünwald, at the Ad Bunker. This is a former air raid shelter, 130 square meters in size. Fascinating premises to be seen together with 3 other female artists. You can book an official tour or schedule a private appointment if you want to see it. I think the exhibition turned out really great. And in those particular spaces, it is very impressive. I'm looking forward to everything that is yet to come. And then, not me personally, but my works will be on display at the Affordable Art Fair in Brussels in early February. And in February, I will be in Madrid at an art fair called Vanity Art Fair. Exactly. And then in May, there will be another artist residency in Austria, in St. Wolfgang, where I will be for 1 week and where you can also come to the studio and watch me work a little. And there is a big group exhibition at the end. Yes, wow, you've got quite a lot to do, right? But good. You're exhibiting in Munich, Berlin, Vienna, Hamburg, London, Tokyo, Paris, Ghent, Hong Kong,
Yes.
Jakarta, Antwerp. You have to paint it first, right? Be able to supply it. Yes, totally, totally, exactly. You really have to keep up. I'm not that fast at producing because, as I just said, the process goes through several media. And yes, I do my best to be there. Yes, there's always something going on. Exactly. And then you also have 4 children. So, hallelujah. A lot of time.
Yes.
Dear Rebecca, I really enjoyed the conversation. Yes, it was a really nice conversation. Thank you. Great, great works. And yes, I'm glad we talked and were able to learn a lot about you. Yes, 1,000 thanks for your invitation and your interesting questions, dear Petra. Very, very welcome. All the best, Rebecca.
All the best to you. Thank you. But
How does the art scene tick everything we've always wanted to know about art? A podcast by and with Petra Lawson,